when woke activists targeted a simple farmer, and he humbled them all. Dawn breaks over Wade Farm, casting a gentle, amber light on the rolling fields. Thomas Wade steps out onto his porch, breathing in the crisp air, his gaze sweeping over the land he's tended for nearly 3 decades. His hands, calloused from years of labor, rest on the railing, fingers tracing the familiar grooves in the wood. This, to him, is life, simple, grounded, steady. The satisfaction of rising with the sun to coax the earth into yielding its bounty gives him a sense of purpose few understand. He is content, rooted in a way city folk could never grasp. In the distance, his daughter, Emily, waves from the edge of the field, a basket of eggs in hand. She's young, barely in her 20s, but already carries a wisdom beyond her years. Thomas smiles, watching her move with practiced grace among the chickens, a seamless extension of farm life. Emily has always been his pride, the one who truly understands the farm's rhythms. They share an unspoken bond built on long days and hard work. Today, he hopes, will be one of those rare, quiet days where nothing out of the ordinary happens. The farm's solitude is deceptive, though. Beneath its calm exterior lies a fragile balance that Thomas knows too well. A single drought, a late frost, or a surge in costs could tip everything. Years of rough seasons have worn him down bit by bit, but he's always found a way through. He's lost count of the times he's patched equipment or sold livestock to make ends meet. Yet, despite the hardships, he wouldn't trade this life for anything. It's all he knows, all he's ever wanted. But now, there are whispers that this way of life might be under threat. In the town center, murmurs have spread about a new initiative spearheaded by some city-based activists who view small farms as inefficient and environmentally harmful. It's all hearsay, nothing that Thomas can confirm, but the thought nags at him. He's heard of other farmers in neighboring counties losing their land or being fined into bankruptcy by people who have never set foot on a farm. He dismisses the idea as nothing more than idle talk, yet a faint worry lingers. Would people like him, people who live by tradition and hard work, soon become relics of the past? A familiar rumble pulls him from his thoughts. Emily's laughter as she runs toward him, her basket now filled with eggs. She's a constant reminder of why he endures the struggles, why he continues to work himself to the bone. "Dad, I think that old rooster's finally given up," she teases, holding up an empty egg cracked and speckled. Thomas chuckles, reaching out to ruffle her hair, grateful for these small moments. They've been through so much together, father and daughter. The farm has shaped her, just as it has shaped him, grounding her in a world that lately seems to be slipping away. They walk toward the barn together, Emily sharing tales of the townsfolk she's met at the market. "Mrs. Jasper told me about a group coming in. Young people, college types calling themselves something like Green Legacy. They're supposed to be here by the weekend." Her tone is light, but Thomas feels a pang of concern. He's heard about these groups, driven by big ideas and little understanding of rural life. He brushes it off with a shrug, hiding his unease. As long as they don't mind getting their shoes dirty, he jokes, though the thought of strangers scrutinizing his life unsettles him. That afternoon, as he's fixing a broken fence, a letter arrives, an official-looking envelope stamped with a logo he doesn't recognize. The sight of it in Emily's hand sets his heart racing. "Dad, it's from the town council," she says quietly, passing it to him. Thomas wipes his hands on his overalls, fingers clumsy with nerves as he opens it. His eyes scan the words, and a cold sweat prickles his skin. It's a notice informing him of an upcoming public forum about local agriculture practices, with his farm specifically mentioned. He frowns, brow furrowing as he reads it again. The letter suggests that his farming methods will be reviewed in light of modern environmental standards. He knows enough to understand what that means. He's being put under a microscope. Thomas feels a surge of indignation. He's lived by these methods all his life, ones passed down from his father and his father's father before that. To him, farming isn't just about producing goods. It's a sacred duty, a bond with the land. Now, some strangers want to tell him how to do what he's always done. His grip tightens on the letter, frustration simmering beneath his calm exterior. As he looks out over his fields, a sense of foreboding settles over him, heavier than the thick summer air. The life he's known, the peace of his quiet world, seems poised to shatter. Emily watches him, concern flickering in her eyes. "What are you going to do, Dad?" she asks, her voice a whisper. Thomas forces a small smile, trying to reassure her. "We'll see, Emily," he says, though his heart is heavy. He knows this is only the beginning, a first step toward a battle he never asked for, a battle against people who might never understand what this land truly means to him. The sound of engines disrupts the morning calm as a line of cars winds its way down the main road into town. Thomas watches from his porch as the convoy pulls up by the town square. The vehicles are plastered with slogans like Green Legacy and Save the Earth, along with brightly painted logos that stand in sharp contrast to the worn, understated charm of the town. He sighs, feeling a heavy weight settle in his chest. It's been years since anything this disruptive happened here, and the sight of it all fills him with a foreboding he can't shake. A group of young people pile out of the cars, chattering loudly, their confidence unmistakable. Most of them wear identical green shirts, emblazoned with environmental slogans. They move with an energy that borders on arrogance, their eyes scanning the town as though inspecting a relic from another time. The townsfolk, going about their usual business, look on in wary silence. Thomas notices the subtle glances they exchange, raised brows, disapproving frowns, quiet murmurs. To the locals, these newcomers represent an unwelcome intrusion, outsiders with little understanding of the lives they're so eager to correct. Among them stands a tall, sharp-featured young man, whose gaze is almost predatory as he surveys the surroundings. Thomas overhears someone calling him Sam, and from the way the others look to him, it's clear he's a leader of sorts. Sam's expression, a mixture of disdain and smugness, irritates Thomas. It's as if the young man sees nothing of value here, only outdated customs and people in need of enlightenment. Sam is quick to pull out a stack of flyers, passing them to anyone who will take one. The title reads, "The Green Legacy, Revitalizing Archaic Communities." Emily stands beside Thomas, her discomfort evident. She's watched her father work these fields all her life, and now these strangers have arrived, determined to educate them as though they're incapable of understanding the world. She glances up at her father, her face a mixture of unease and indignation. "They don't even know us, Dad," she whispers, the hurt in her voice unmistakable. Thomas rests a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his touch steadying her. "They'll learn soon enough, Emily," he replies, though his own confidence feels fragile under the weight of what's to come. The activists begin their campaign in earnest, moving through the town square, handing out pamphlets and setting up displays. They talk to anyone who will listen, explaining their ideas on sustainable farming and modern agricultural methods. Their words are loud, meant to draw attention, but they feel hollow to Thomas. The townsfolk listen politely, some nodding, others exchanging skeptical glances. He notices the thinly veiled irritation in his neighbors' expressions. They're not used to being treated as though they're in need of a lesson on how to live their lives. For the townspeople, farming is more than a job. It's a way of life passed down through generations, and these new, modern values feel alien. Mrs. Jasper, an elderly woman who has sold vegetables at the market for decades, frowns as a young activist lectures her on sustainable produce. "I've been growing these tomatoes since before you were born, sweetheart," she says gently, a trace of defiance in her tone. But the activist's eyes gloss over her words, already moving on to the next person, unwilling to listen. The tension simmers just beneath the surface, the townsfolk's pride chafing under the activist's patronizing gaze. The moment Thomas has been dreading arrives sooner than he expects. As he loads a bag of feed onto his truck, Sam approaches, hands in his pockets, a smug smirk tugging at his lips. "You must be Thomas Wade," Sam says, his tone friendly but carrying an edge. Thomas nods, meeting his gaze steadily. "And you're with Green Legacy, I take it." Sam's smile widens, a hint of condescension flashing in his eyes. "We're here to help towns like yours move into the future," he says, as though he's offering Thomas a gift. Their conversation quickly turns tense. Sam speaks of outdated practices, of the necessity for farms to adapt to modern environmental standards. People like you are doing more harm than good, he says, his voice laden with unearned authority. Thomas listens in silence, anger simmering under his calm exterior. I've worked this land my whole life, he replies, his voice steady. I know what it needs, and I know what it can give. Sam scoffs, brushing off Thomas's words as though they mean nothing. Change is coming, Mr. Wade, he says, a hint of threat in his tone. Whether you like it or not. As Sam walks away, he tosses one last line over his shoulder, a warning and a promise wrapped in one. Soon enough, everyone will know what you're really doing here. The words hang in the air, heavy and ominous. Thomas stands alone, watching the young man's retreating figure, anger and dread pooling in his gut. He can feel the weight of Sam's unspoken threat, a promise to expose him to the world, to cast him in a light he neither asked for nor deserves. But Thomas's resolve hardens. If this is a battle they want, he won't back down. Not now, not ever. The first sign of trouble comes in the form of a notification. Emily, scrolling through her phone one evening, stumbles upon a post by Green Legacy. Her heart sinks as she reads the words. Thomas Wade, a small-town farmer, symbolizes outdated practices that harm our planet. There, beneath the caption, is a photo of her father standing by his fields, taken without his knowledge. The post continues, accusing him of ignoring environmental progress, presenting his life's work as a blight on the earth. She clutches her phone, feeling a mix of horror and anger surge within her. Within hours, the post has garnered hundreds of comments, many from people far removed from the town. Emily watches as strangers, armed with only half-truths and twisted facts, tear into her father's reputation. The activists have taken snapshots of the farm and cherry-picked information, warping it into something unrecognizable. They talk about pesticide usage and soil degradation, suggesting that Thomas is knowingly poisoning the land for profit. The words sting, each one driving a wedge of disbelief deeper into Emily's chest. This isn't her father. It's a distorted shadow, a cruel caricature crafted by people who don't know him. As the sun sets over the farm, Emily finds her father in the barn, his face weary but calm. She shows him the post, her hands trembling. Thomas reads in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finally speaks, his voice is low, steady. They don't know us, Emily, he says, forcing a small smile. But she can see the sadness in his eyes, the weight of betrayal pressing down on him. This is a man who's devoted his life to the land, who's taught her the value of hard work and respect for nature. And now, strangers have turned that pride into a weapon against him. The next morning, Emily hears her aunt on the phone, her voice strained and cracked. The news of the post has spread, and more people are reaching out, some offering words of support, others echoing the activists' concerns. Every ding of her phone brings another notification, another reminder of the smear campaign unfolding online. Emily's chest tightens as she reads comments calling her father a dinosaur, a selfish relic. Each word feels like a slap, cutting deeper as the flood of accusations grows. Her home, once a sanctuary, now feels like the center of a storm she can't escape. The town, however, isn't swayed so easily. Most of the townsfolk know Thomas, know the care he puts into his work. They sympathize with him, standing by him in quiet solidarity. Mrs. Jasper, who sells produce next to Thomas at the market, shakes her head in disbelief. It's all nonsense, I tell you, she mutters, rallying her friends. But there are whispers, too. Rumors that maybe there's some truth to what the activists are saying. A few younger townsfolk, eager for change, begin to murmur about how maybe it's time the town moved forward, casting wary glances at Thomas. For Thomas, the betrayal cuts deep. Each word, each accusation, digs into him like barbed wire. He tries to hold his head high, to go about his work as if nothing has changed. But inside, he feels himself unraveling. All his life, he's poured his sweat and soul into the land, honoring the traditions of his ancestors. Now, That legacy feels tarnished, twisted beyond recognition by strangers who know nothing of his life. Fear gnaws at him, mingling with anger, as he thinks of Emily and his wife, wondering if they, too, will come to doubt him. The community itself begins to splinter. Old friends whisper behind closed doors, neighbors exchange uneasy looks, and the air in town becomes thick with tension. Those who support Thomas are met with suspicious glances, while those who side with the activists wear their newfound conviction like a badge. Thomas watches as once close friends avoid his gaze, their loyalty wavering under the weight of the activist's message. The divisions deepen, and the town, once a tight-knit haven, feels foreign and fractured. He wonders if things will ever return to the way they were, or if this is the beginning of the end. The town council catches wind of the escalating tension, and Thomas receives an invitation to a local meeting. The council suggests he clarify his practices in light of recent events, presenting it as an opportunity to reassure the community. To Thomas, it feels like an accusation cloaked in polite words, a summons to defend himself against baseless claims. Emily tries to reassure him, insisting that this is his chance to set the record straight. But he feels a chill in his bones, sensing that the truth may not be enough to silence those who have already made up their minds. When Thomas arrives at the council meeting, he's met with a mix of familiar faces and strangers. Townsfolk who've come to hear him out, and activists who wear smug, self-assured expressions. Sam stands at the front of the room, arms crossed, a look of calculated defiance on his face. As the council calls for order, Thomas takes a deep breath, steeling himself. Just as he begins to speak, Sam interrupts, his voice echoing with authority. "Mr. Wade, don't you think it's time you admit the damage you've done?" The question hangs in the air, heavy and accusatory, as all eyes turn toward Thomas, waiting for his response. The meeting leaves Thomas shaken. As he drives back to the farm, his mind races with the faces and accusations he's just confronted. The weight of it all presses down on him, an invisible burden that clings to his every step. Part of him wants to defend himself, to make everyone see the truth of his work. But another part, the quieter part, yearns to avoid the conflict, to return to the life he's always known. He clutches the steering wheel, feeling the storm brewing inside him, unsure which path to take. The following morning, Thomas's worst fears come to life. Local media outlets pick up the story, sensationalizing every detail with headlines like "A Small Town's Fight Against a Farmer's Legacy of Harm." The article paints him as a villain, amplifying the activist's claims and portraying his farm as a blight on the community. Pictures of him, taken during the council meeting, flash across screens and newspapers, casting him as a figure of suspicion. The once familiar town becomes foreign territory, his name whispered in disdain by those who only weeks ago greeted him warmly. For Emily, the ordeal strikes closer to home. At school, friends she's known her whole life now keep their distance, their expressions guarded and judgmental. She catches fragments of their conversations, words like environmental threat and archaic ways, all directed at her father. It feels like a betrayal, each glance a painful reminder of how quickly people can turn. She begins eating lunch alone, her once comforting school now a cold, unwelcoming place. Her father's struggle has bled into her own life, turning her world upside down. That night, Thomas's wife, Margaret, sits beside him, her face etched with worry. She's seen the strain on his face, the way he's held back his frustration, swallowing it down to maintain his dignity. "Thomas," she begins, her voice soft but determined, "you can't let them do this to us. You gotta fight back." He meets her gaze, seeing the fear in her eyes. For years, he's been the calm, steady one, the man who handles hardship without flinching. But now, even Margaret seems to sense that the storm may be too strong to weather in silence. Despite his reservations, Thomas knows that his silence only fuels the activist's momentum. Online, their posts grow bolder, gaining more traction as new followers jump on the bandwagon. Strangers from far and wide join the chorus, demanding accountability and calling him a relic of a bygone era. The relentless stream of criticism gnaws at him, each comment a reminder of his perceived failures. It's as if the world has decided that he's guilty before he's even had the chance to tell his side of the story. As tensions escalate, Sam returns, finding Thomas near the market one afternoon. With a smug smile, Sam steps in close, his voice loud enough for others to overhear. "Why don't you just admit you're wrong, Thomas? We both know you're in over your head." Thomas clenches his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm. But Sam doesn't relent. He challenges Thomas to a live debate, daring him to defend his practices in front of an audience. "What are you so afraid of?" Sam taunts, his words dripping with mockery. Thomas's hand tightens into a fist, his resolve tested as he fights to keep his composure. Alone in the barn that evening, Thomas feels the cracks forming within himself. He questions everything he's believed in: his love for the land, the values he's upheld, the legacy he's built. He wonders if he's truly the man he thought he was, or if the world is right to cast him aside. Doubt seeps into his heart, each moment of scrutiny chipping away at the foundations of his life. He's always been sure of his path, but now, under the weight of others' judgment, that certainty wavers, leaving him vulnerable and raw. As he contemplates his next move, a soft voice calls his name. He turns to see Lena, one of the activists, standing hesitantly at the door. She's different from the others, quieter, with a look of uncertainty in her eyes. She approaches him slowly, glancing around as if wary of being seen. "I wanted to talk to you," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. Her gaze shifts to the ground, and Thomas senses something in her, doubt, perhaps, or a hint of empathy. In her presence, the rigid animosity he's felt begins to soften, if only slightly. Before leaving, Lena hesitates, her eyes lingering on Thomas with an intensity that suggests unspoken words. She glances over her shoulder, then leans in closer. "There's more to this than you know," she murmurs, her voice filled with trepidation. Thomas's brow furrows, confusion and curiosity mingling in his gaze. Lena looks away, her expression conflicted. "I can't say much, but not everyone is here for the reasons you think." Her cryptic words leave him reeling as she slips away, disappearing into the night. Her warning hangs in the air, sparking a new, unsettling question. What is Sam really after? The night of the debate arrives, and the atmosphere is electric. The town hall is packed, the audience buzzing with anticipation. Some are here to support Thomas, others to witness what they see as the beginning of a new era in the town. Reporters line the back wall, cameras at the ready, their lenses trained on the makeshift stage where Thomas and Sam will soon stand face to face. Thomas feels the weight of the room's divided energy, a pressure that seems to press against him from all sides. As Sam strides onto the stage, he radiates confidence. Dressed sharply and speaking with the ease of someone accustomed to commanding attention, he greets the audience with a charismatic smile. His words are polished, each sentence designed to capture his listeners' respect. He introduces himself as a voice of progress, a messenger sent to help this charming yet outdated town move forward. The crowd murmurs, some nodding, others exchanging skeptical glances. Thomas watches from the wings, his heart pounding as he braces himself to step into the spotlight. When Thomas finally takes his place beside Sam, the contrast is stark. He's dressed in his usual work clothes, no fancy suit, no pretense. His rough hands grip the microphone, his gaze steady as he looks out over the crowd. He feels a pang of nervousness as he catches sight of Emily and Margaret in the audience. Their faces a mixture of pride and worry. Clearing his throat, he begins to speak, his voice raw and unpolished. "I'm just a farmer," he says, his tone steady, "but I've worked this land my whole life. I know what it gives and I know what it takes." As Thomas recounts his years on the farm, his love for the land shines through. He speaks of the early mornings, the careful balance required to keep the soil healthy, the respect he's learned from nature itself. His words are honest, stripped of any agenda other than the truth. The townsfolk who've known him all their lives listen, moved by the sincerity in his voice. But as Thomas speaks, he notices Sam's smug smile, as though he's simply waiting for his turn to pounce. When Sam finally responds, he doesn't hold back. With practiced ease, he twists Thomas's words, framing him as a man clinging to a bygone era. "Thomas," Sam says, his voice laced with condescension, "no one is doubting your dedication. But dedication doesn't make something right. Refusing to adapt, to move forward, that's how communities become stagnant." He gestures to the crowd, appealing to their desire for progress. "We're not here to destroy tradition. We're here to improve upon it." Applause breaks out, and Thomas feels the sting of Sam's words, each one chipping away at his resolve. The debate escalates, and Thomas struggles to hold his ground. Sam is relentless, spinning every point Thomas makes, framing him as resistant backward. The crowd's mood shifts, some nodding in agreement with Sam's arguments. Thomas feels himself faltering, his voice growing weaker as he fights to defend his life's work. Each sentence becomes harder to say, each point more difficult to make. He can see the doubt flickering in the faces of friends, neighbors, even his own family. For a moment, he wonders if Sam is right, if maybe he has been clinging to the past. As Sam finishes what seems like his winning argument, the room falls silent. Thomas stands there, his mind racing, his heart heavy with the realization that he might have lost. He opens his mouth to respond, but no words come. Just then, a voice breaks the silence. "Wait!" All eyes turn to the back of the room, where Lena stands, her face a mixture of determination and hesitation. She steps forward, her gaze shifting from Sam to Thomas, her expression one of quiet defiance. The crowd stirs, murmurs rippling as she makes her way to the front. Lena's voice trembles at first, but she finds her strength as she speaks. "I came here with Sam, believing in what he stands for. I believed we were helping, making a difference. But somewhere along the way, I realized," she pauses, casting a glance at Thomas. "I realized that maybe we weren't listening." Her words hang in the air, charged with an intensity that cuts through the tension. She turns to the crowd, her voice growing firmer. "Thomas has dedicated his life to this land. Maybe we should be learning from him instead of tearing him down." Sam's face contorts with anger as Lena continues, his calm veneer slipping. He interrupts, his voice rising with frustration. "Lena, what are you doing?" She meets his gaze, unflinching. "I'm telling the truth," she says quietly. The room watches, captivated by the unraveling confrontation. Sam glares at her, his composure shattered, and without another word, he storms off the stage, leaving Lena and Thomas standing alone before the crowd. The silence is thick, the tension broken only by the sound of Sam's footsteps fading into the distance. Thomas, shaken but hopeful, glances at Lena, grateful for her unexpected support. The morning after the debate, Thomas sits on his porch, feeling the weight of the previous night's events. He watches the sunrise, the golden light casting warmth over the familiar land. The farm, the hills, the trees, all of it feels different now, as if shadowed by the turmoil he's endured. Just as he's lost in thought, he hears a soft knock. Standing on his doorstep is Lena, her expression a mix of resolve and remorse. She nods, a silent gesture that speaks of her intent to make things right. Inside, over cups of coffee, Lena finally opens up. She admits her growing doubts about Sam and the methods he's used. She explains how she initially joined his group out of genuine concern for the environment, eager to make a difference. But over time, Sam's tactics had made her uneasy. "I didn't see it at first," she says quietly, her gaze downcast. "I thought we were doing good work, but something about Sam, it doesn't feel right anymore." Her confession is sincere, and Thomas sees a young woman caught between ideals and reality. Lena's vulnerability begins to dissolve Thomas's defenses, and he feels an unexpected connection forming between them. She opens up about her past, sharing that she grew up in a family much like his, rooted in tradition, proud of the land. She'd once dreamed of working on her family's small farm, but life had taken her in a different direction. Listening to her story, Thomas realizes that Lena's inner conflict mirrors his own struggles in a way. They're both products of two worlds, one rooted in heritage, the other shaped by modern ideals. Lena's voice drops as she recounts the guilt she feels for her role in tarnishing Thomas's reputation. "I wish I could undo the damage," she says, her voice cracking. "I was so quick to judge, so quick to follow Sam without understanding what this farm means to you." She looks at him, her eyes full of remorse. Thomas, moved by her honesty, places a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes we lose our way trying to do what we think is right," he replies softly. He doesn't fully absolve her, but he sees the sincerity in her desire to make amends. In a rare moment of openness, Thomas tells Lena about his father's legacy. He speaks of his father's tireless work on the farm, the lessons he'd passed down, and the respect he'd instilled for the land. "This farm isn't just soil and crops," Thomas says, his voice filled with quiet pride. "It's my father's legacy. It's everything he worked for and everything he left behind." Lena listens, understanding now why Thomas has held on so tightly. His dedication isn't mere stubbornness. It's a tribute, a way of preserving the memory of someone he deeply loved. As their conversation unfolds, an idea begins to take shape between them. Lena suggests a way to repair the damage, a plan to expose Sam's true intentions. She admits that Sam has often used coercion, pressuring his followers into more extreme tactics. "If people knew the truth, they might see things differently," she says, a spark of determination in her eyes. Thomas hesitates, aware of the risks involved, but he realizes that this might be the only way to reclaim his reputation. Together, they decide to bring Lena's story to light. Lena reaches out to a local reporter, someone she knows has a reputation for fair reporting. She shares her experience, detailing Sam's manipulative tactics and his disregard for the actual well-being of the community. The reporter, intrigued by her confession, agrees to run a story. He assures them that he'll approach it carefully, giving Lena the chance to share her side without sensationalizing her words. As the interview progresses, Lena speaks with courage, exposing the truth behind the movement that had almost destroyed Thomas's life. As Lena's story begins to circulate, the public's perception shifts. Neighbors who had initially sided with the activists reconsider their stance, some reaching out to Thomas to offer their support. Emily, who had been watching her father endure the ordeal in silence, feels a newfound respect for Lena. She approaches her one afternoon, thanking her for standing up against Sam. "It took courage," Emily says, her voice sincere. The two young women bond over the shared experience, both recognizing the importance of doing what's right, even when it's difficult. But just as things seem to be turning around, the threat intensifies. Sam discovers Lena's betrayal, and his response is swift and ruthless. He takes to social media, rallying his followers to discredit Lena, calling her a traitor and casting doubt on her motives. The situation escalates once more, and the online attacks become vicious, targeting not only Lena but Thomas and his family as well. Sam's revenge is swift and ruthless. Almost immediately after Lena's story surfaces, he fires back, accusing both her and Thomas of spreading lies and manipulating the community. He posts scathing accusations online, calling them frauds and hypocrites, claiming they're trying to stifle progressive change. His posts go viral, drawing in followers from far beyond the town, and the onslaught of hate intensifies. Thomas's inbox fills with hostile messages, each one more venomous than the last, making it clear that Sam has no intention of letting this go. Days later, Thomas wakes up to find parts of his farm vandalized, crops trampled, equipment smashed, fencing torn down. The sight is heartbreaking, each damaged row a personal affront to the life he's built. Standing in the fields, he feels the weight of his hard work lying in ruins around him. The familiar scent of the soil mingles with the bitterness of his frustration. This is no longer just an online war. It's become personal, reaching deep into his home. He senses a line has been crossed, the fight creeping into spaces he once thought were safe. The vandalism sends ripples through the town, leaving neighbors shaken and uncertain. Some rally around Thomas, expressing outrage and offering help to repair the damage. Others, however, keep their distance, wary of becoming targets themselves. Rumors spread in hushed conversations, dividing friends and families. The once tight-knit community seems to splinter as fear and doubt take hold. The tension is palpable in every grocery store aisle, every church pew, each person feeling the consequences of the battle that's uprooted their quiet lives. Thomas's composure begins to crack as the pressure mounts. For the first time, he seriously considers abandoning the farm, leaving behind the life he's poured his soul into. The thought gnaws at him, foreign yet painfully tempting. He envisions a fresh start somewhere distant, away from the accusations and hatred. But the idea of leaving his father's legacy feels like a betrayal, a bitter resignation that his hard work wasn't enough to protect his family. Each night, he lies awake, torn between self-preservation and the sense of duty that's defined him. Lena, meanwhile, is racked with guilt, blaming herself for Thomas's suffering. She watches him bear the brunt of Sam's rage, knowing her actions have intensified the conflict. In private, she confesses her remorse, offering to leave town if it would lessen the pressure on him. But Thomas, despite his own struggles, refuses her offer. "You did what was right," he tells her, his voice rough yet unwavering. "This isn't your fault. This is Sam's doing." His words are meant to comfort, but Lena sees the strain in his eyes, the toll that this fight has taken on him. Late one evening, as the stress weighs heavily on him, Thomas's daughter, Emily, approaches him with tear-filled eyes. She clutches his hand, her voice trembling as she pleads, "Please, Dad, don't give up. We need you to keep fighting." Her words reach him in a way nothing else has, her vulnerability piercing through his exhaustion. In her eyes, he sees not just a daughter's love, but the hope and strength he's instilled in her over the years. Emily's plea stirs something deep within him, a reminder of the strength he once possessed. In a quiet moment, Thomas reflects on his childhood, on the lessons his father had taught him about resilience and the value of hard work. He recalls the cold mornings spent at his father's side, the times he'd wanted to quit but had been urged to persevere. His father's voice echoes in his mind, reminding him that true strength is in standing firm, even when the world feels like it's crumbling. This memory lights a fire within him, rekindling his resolve. Leaving would be easy, but staying, fighting, would honor his father's legacy. With a newfound determination, Thomas makes a decision. He won't let Sam's attacks drive him away from the life he's built. He contacts a lawyer, ready to file a defamation lawsuit against Sam, taking a stand for himself and his family. This isn't just about clearing his name. It's about protecting the principles he's lived by. The weight of his choice is heavy, the path ahead uncertain, but he feels a strange sense of calm. The fight has taken a darker turn, but he's prepared to see it through, knowing that backing down is no longer an option. News of the lawsuit spreads, and it isn't long before Sam learns of Thomas's legal action. Furious, Sam retaliates with a cryptic message online, warning Thomas that he'll regret this decision. The threat is ominous, leaving both Thomas and the community bracing for whatever comes next. As Thomas steels himself for the storm ahead, he realizes that this battle has only just begun. But for the first time, he feels ready, determined to face whatever may come to protect his family's legacy and his own honor. The courthouse buzzes with tension as townsfolk and outsiders pack the gallery, filling every seat and spilling into the aisles. Conversations ripple through the crowd, some whispering in support of Thomas, others openly skeptical. The case has drawn a divided audience, some siding with Thomas and his family, others still loyal to Sam and his promises of change. In this tense atmosphere, Thomas sits beside his lawyer, his expression calm but resolute, prepared to defend the integrity of his life's work. As the proceedings begin, testimonies unfold that paint a clearer picture of Sam's tactics. Witness after witness describes his manipulation, detailing how he twisted information to further his agenda. Some former members of Sam's activist group even admit to feeling pressured and uncomfortable with his methods, but stayed silent out of fear or loyalty. Each word strengthens Thomas's case, revealing that Sam's motivations were far from genuine. The crowd shifts uneasily, sensing the disintegration of the once charismatic activist's image. Lena's testimony becomes a pivotal moment. She takes the stand, her voice steady as she describes her journey from a loyal follower to someone disillusioned by Sam's true nature. She recounts specific incidents where Sam used fear tactics, exploiting her and others' concerns for the environment to push his personal vendetta against traditional farmers like Thomas. Her bravery is evident, her words powerful, and the room grows silent as she speaks, many realizing for the first time the extent of Sam's manipulation. Sam's lawyer attempts to undermine both Lena and Thomas, throwing accusations to cast doubt on their credibility. He questions Lena's motives, suggesting she turned against Sam out of spite, and paints Thomas as stubborn, an old relic clinging to outdated practices. Yet Thomas sits unmoved, his stoic expression a testament to his resilience. He refuses to let anger or frustration show, knowing that maintaining his dignity is the best response to the attacks. His calm presence becomes a silent but powerful rebuttal to the lawyer's provocations. Then, a breakthrough moment shifts the course of the trial. Evidence surfaces that further exposes Sam's deceit. Emails and social media messages where he openly strategized about targeting Thomas's farm as a symbolic enemy. The documents reveal that Sam had exaggerated environmental concerns, prioritizing publicity over truth. Gasps ripple through the gallery as the crowd realizes just how calculated Sam's campaign truly was. The revelations strike a blow to his credibility, his polished image unraveling in front of everyone. The emotional weight of the trial begins to settle on the crowd, many visibly moved by Thomas's quiet integrity in the face of relentless attacks. Some in the audience wipe away tears, others hang their heads, perhaps feeling guilty for believing Sam's lies. Emily watches her father from across the room, her heart swelling with pride. She sees not only his strength, but the legacy of her grandfather shining through him. Her father's unwavering spirit in the face of such adversity fills her with a profound respect. Finally, the judge delivers his verdict. The decision is a clear victory for Thomas, with the court acknowledging the harm Sam's actions have inflicted on him and his family. Relief washes over Thomas as the weight of months of slander and struggle lifts from his shoulders. Lena smiles through her tears, feeling redemption for the role she's played in restoring his reputation. As Thomas leaves the courthouse, he's greeted with handshakes and words of encouragement from supporters, the community slowly healing around him. For the first time in what feels like ages, Thomas feels a sense of peace. The vindication in the courtroom has restored his name and brought closure to the ordeal. Emily clings to his arm, beaming with pride, and even Lena seems lighter, relieved that her efforts to make amends have succeeded. The road ahead is still long, but he feels ready to walk it, knowing he's earned the respect and understanding of those around him. It's a quiet victory, one marked not by fanfare, but by the quiet satisfaction of justice served. Just as Thomas settles back into the rhythm of farm life, a letter arrives in the mail, a plain, unmarked envelope with a note inside. He opens it, his brow furrowing as he reads. The letter Thomas receives is as puzzling as it is unsettling. Typed and unsigned, it outlines parts of Sam's past that are unknown to the public. Thomas reads it carefully, his brow furrowing as he learns about Sam's troubled upbringing and strained family relationships. The letter hints at a father who was harsh and unyielding, and a mother who left early on, leaving Sam to navigate life alone. It becomes clear that Sam's crusade isn't just about activism. It's the product of deeper scars and resentments that have driven him toward confrontation. As he reads, Thomas senses the hurt behind Sam's actions, understanding now why Sam might harbor such anger toward those who represent traditional values. Sam's family had rejected him when he was younger, scorning his early attempts to challenge the status quo. For Sam, taking down people like Thomas became a way to gain the validation he'd long been denied. Thomas realizes that Sam's attacks weren't merely born out of ideology, but a deeply personal struggle to overcome his own insecurities. Thomas sets the letter down, feeling a strange mix of sympathy and sorrow. In another life, Sam might have been a good man, a leader who genuinely wanted to make a difference. But years of personal loss, resentment, and loneliness had twisted his good intentions into something destructive. Thomas reflects on his own values and the importance of forgiveness. He knows that bitterness can eat away at a person, that unhealed wounds can lead even the brightest souls astray. This understanding stirs something in him, planting the seeds of compassion. As the day goes on, Thomas mulls over his next steps. He could let it go, consider the matter settled, and focus on his family and farm. But his conscience tells him otherwise. His father had taught him the importance of understanding and extending a hand even to those who seemed beyond help. Sam might never accept it, but Thomas feels compelled to reach out, to at least give him the chance to find peace. Deciding to try, Thomas picks up the phone, making arrangements to meet Sam face to face. When they finally meet in a quiet park on the edge of town, Sam's demeanor is guarded, his shoulders tense as he eyes Thomas with suspicion. Thomas, however, is calm, his face lined with a mixture of empathy and resolve. "I came here to listen," he begins softly. The words catch Sam off guard, his defensive posture faltering as he realizes that Thomas isn't here to lecture or scold. Instead, Thomas simply asks, "Why did this matter to you so much?" His tone is free of judgment, inviting Sam to share his truth. For the first time, Sam finds himself lowering his defenses. He recounts his past, albeit reluctantly, explaining the painful memories of rejection and disillusionment that shaped his worldview. He admits to feeling threatened by those who seemed content with life's simpler, traditional ways, values he'd felt isolated from in his own family. Thomas listens without interrupting, his gaze steady, taking in each word with an understanding that surprises Sam. The conversation takes on a raw, vulnerable tone, a moment of honesty between two men who have been pitted against each other. When Sam finishes, Thomas shares a piece of wisdom his father had passed down to him. "We can't control the past, but we can choose how we let it shape us." He speaks of his own struggles, the years of hard work and sacrifice, and the love he pours into his farm every day. He tells Sam that sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is to stand firm in their values while still allowing room for growth and empathy. Sam listens, visibly moved, realizing he's hearing something he'd longed to understand. In that quiet park, something shifts between them. Sam's hardened exterior softens, and for the first time, he seems genuinely remorseful. He thanks Thomas, though it's barely more than a whisper. He's spent years fighting against a world he felt would never accept him. But here is Thomas, offering understanding instead of blame. Thomas, too, feels lighter, sensing that he's made a difference in a way that goes beyond winning or losing. Their conversation isn't one of absolution, but it carries the weight of mutual respect and a newfound clarity. As they part, both men experience a sense of peace. Sam may still have a long road ahead, but Thomas's forgiveness has given him a glimmer of hope, a chance to rethink his path. For Thomas, this encounter solidifies his belief in the power of compassion and resilience. He returns to his farm with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that sometimes the most profound victories are those won within. And as he steps back onto his land, he feels the quiet satisfaction of having upheld his values, not through anger or resentment, but through understanding and grace. The morning sun casts a warm glow over the fields as Thomas and Emily work side by side, their movements in sync with the familiar rhythm of farm life. After months of struggle and conflict, there's a new energy between them, a quiet resilience forged through hardship. Emily smiles, her admiration for her father stronger than ever, and Thomas feels a surge of pride watching her. They both understand that they're tending to more than crops. They're nurturing a legacy built on strength and determination. News of Thomas's victory and the courtroom showdown has spread throughout the community, and the support he now receives is unwavering. Neighbors who once remained neutral now greet him with respect and encouragement, some stopping by to lend a hand on the farm. Even those who initially sided with Sam approach him with apologies, admitting they were swayed by the activist's persuasive charm. Thomas accepts their words graciously, glad to see his bond with the community mending in the wake of the trial. Lena, having found her own peace, prepares to leave town. She stops by the farm to say her goodbyes, her eyes filled with gratitude and resolve. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," she says, her voice filled with emotion. Thomas nods, grateful for the role she played in his vindication, and assures her that she's left a positive mark on their lives. Emily hugs Lena, a quiet bond of friendship and understanding passing between them. Lena leaves with the sense of having helped restore something valuable, both in herself and in the town. As Thomas returns to his daily work, he reflects on how the ordeal has transformed him and the farm. This land, once a mere extension of his father's legacy, now feels like a testament to his own perseverance and principles. He's come to understand that his roots here aren't just physical. They're part of his identity, a source of strength that has seen him through this storm. With each day, he feels more certain that he's exactly where he belongs, surrounded by the earth that grounds him. The younger generation in the community, once swayed by Sam's charisma, now approaches Thomas with newfound respect. They ask questions about his methods, eager to learn the wisdom behind his traditional farming practices. Thomas sees a spark of curiosity and humility in their eyes, and he takes the time to explain his ways, grateful that they're willing to listen. It's a new beginning for him, a chance to pass down the knowledge he's acquired, ensuring that his methods and values won't be forgotten. In moments of quiet reflection, Thomas feels immense pride in his family. Emily's loyalty and courage remind him of his late wife's strength, while the farm itself is a symbol of the resilience that runs through their bloodline. He knows that no matter what challenges lie ahead, they'll face them together, grounded in the values they've worked so hard to protect. It fills him with hope to see Emily embracing their way of life, committed to carrying forward the legacy he's built. One morning, as Thomas and Emily plant new seeds in the soil, there's a sense of renewal in the air. The act of planting feels symbolic, a fresh start, a commitment to the future. They work quietly, their hands covered in earth, both aware of the deeper meaning behind the task. These new crops represent not only their livelihood, but also the endurance of their family, a promise that they'll continue to nurture this land with love and care, just as generations before them have done. As they finish, Thomas speaks softly to Emily, offering words of wisdom he hopes she'll carry forward. Remember, it's not the loud voices that matter, but the quiet ones, the ones that listen, that understand, he says, his gaze steady and calm. In this world, strength doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes it's simply standing your ground, even when the ground feels shaky. Emily nods, absorbing his words, her admiration for him deepening. She knows that these lessons will guide her long after he's gone. Thomas looks out over his land, the fields stretching before him, a reflection of his life's work. The farm stands resilient and enduring, much like him, a quiet testament to the power of character and conviction. The struggles and trials he's faced have only strengthened his bond with this place, a bond that's unbreakable. With a deep breath, he feels a sense of peace settle over him, knowing that he's upheld the values that define him, leaving a legacy of resilience and quiet strength for future generations.